Hello, everybody. Intuition here. Thank you, as always, for making time and space for us. Today, we want to talk about the idea of grounding and why many of us feel like it is important to ground ourselves. When we say grounding, we talk about this idea when people have the need to sit and say, well, hold on a second. I'm just feeling so crazy. I must ground myself. I must ground myself to the earth. Because before, I guess I was grounded to something that I was over-identifying with. Maybe I was over-identifying with a person or my job or a thing that was outside of myself. So therefore, I feel like I need to ground myself. And what better thing to ground myself to the earth? But we do not understand this concept of grounding, and we do not understand why you feel the need to, when you are feeling like you are over-identifying with something, that you feel the need to, again, over-identify with something else and ground yourself to the earth. Because again, isn't that why you were feeling so ungrounded to begin with? You were identifying with something outside of yourself, and now you're going to continue to do that on that train of thought, but maybe it's better to ground myself to something really big as opposed to the person or the minute little thing that I was over-identifying with. But what we want to maybe put you in touch with is that when you ground yourself, you are literally grounding yourself. Not in the sense of I'm grounding myself to the earth, but when you ground yourself, it's like you're grounding yourself like you were punishing yourself. Because again, the earth is not all it's cracked up to be. You do remember that you created the earth and you created this universe. You and the 7 universal principalities, which you are an extension of, so therefore you created the earth. And you created this earth, not in your right mind, obviously, because good God, I'm sure you would have done a lot better if you were in your right mind creating this place in space. But you were not in your right mind in the sense of you were not in the remembrance of the godlike force that you are. You were not in the remembrance of the universal principality that you are. So therefore, when you created this space, when you created this earth, it is inherently holding your consciousness in which you endowed upon it when you created it. And if your consciousness was not based or grounded in all it is that you are, then it surely will not remember or have the capacity to really ground itself in all it is that it is. So therefore, to ground yourself in this earth is to continue to imprison yourself in this earth. So grounding is just another over-identification with something that is outside of yourself, that is not you. Even though you did create this earth, to ground yourself in something that you create is kind of silly. Do you ground yourself in the pictures that you create? If you draw a picture and you put it on your fridge, are you going to ground yourself to that? The food that you made this morning, maybe for breakfast, maybe you had cereal, maybe you cooked yourself some pancakes. Are you going to ground yourself in those pancakes that you ate? That's silly too. Why are you grounding yourself in things that you created? Why are you trying to identify with things that are outside of yourself? If you want to do something better, because when you ground yourself to something that you inherently created in a lack of consciousness, it is not really going to bring you or take you too far. So if you want to do something better, then uplift yourself and recenter yourself. That is far better than grounding. Because again, as we said, when you ground yourself that was created in a lack of consciousness, what you're going to be grounded in is a lack of consciousness. And that's exactly what it is that you are trying to get away from. The lack of consciousness and the craziness that you're feeling because you're not feeling your whole self, because you've been choosing to identify with a million things and therefore pouring your energy into things that are not yourself. So therefore, if you want to regain a sense of yourself, why are you identifying with the earth? Might as well do one better and just identify with yourself and recenter yourself into the being, into the inherent God force that you are, into the universal principality that you inherently are, always. When you recenter yourself back into the being, when you start pouring energy back into the individual, back into the only thing that really matters, then you start to recenter yourself back into the being, back into the knowingness, back into all it is that you are. Back into the being that created this earth to begin with. But when you're pouring your energy out into everything else other than you, and therefore you're feeling exhausted and crazy because your energy and your focus and attention is directed on 10 different things, which is putting you into a chaos within yourself. And then the idea is, well, let me take all that back and then redirect it back into the earth. Well, you were doing the same thing that you just were doing a second ago that was driving you crazy, except now it's a little bit more focused, but it's still not as focused as it could be because you're still neglecting the one individual that could really turn things around, which is you. The earth is not going to turn itself around, and it's not going to turn you around. If it could, then we would all be kicked off this earth. But we're not, because we created this earth. The earth didn't create us, we created this earth. So because we created this earth, it can't kick us off of it, and it surely can't turn us and our consciousness around. And again, if it could, then every time we'd ground ourselves to the earth, then we'd be levitating, then we'd be back into the center of all it is that we are in that sense. But we can't, because again, we are not the earth, we created the earth. And when we created the earth, we were in a lack of consciousness to begin with. So therefore, that is why when we ground ourselves to the earth, we really don't get too far. Maybe we feel a little bit better, but that is only because we stopped identifying with everybody else and their mother, and we started identifying and focusing our attention to one thing. So we feel a little less chaotic. But feeling a little less chaotic is not exactly the destination that we were trying to attain when we said we wanted to ground ourselves. What I'm sure all of us wanted to attain was feeling more like ourselves. So, if you want to feel more like yourself, guess what you get to do? Guess what you can do at any time? Recenter yourself, because that is the main issue. You're going out of balance with yourself, and when you go out of balance with yourself, you start over-identifying with everything else that is not you, and when you start over-identifying with everything else that is not you, you keep on trying to animate everything else around you, trying to figure out why you feel so crazy, and as you animate one more thing, you feel even crazier because that's more energy that you just expended, trying to feel better about yourself. So just start taking some of that energy back and redirecting it into recentering yourself, into remembering all it is that you are. Not grounding yourself like you were a child, not imprisoning yourself. You know it is a Friday night. And that all your friends are out recentering yourself. And you're sitting here grounded. Stop grounding yourself. You don't need to be punished. Stop putting yourself in a box, in the prison that you made for yourselves to begin with, in creating this earth. All you have to do is recenter yourself and start feeling more like yourself. And when you start feeling more like yourself, you remember all of yourself. And you stop trying to animate things that don't need to be animated. You stop trying to shift your focus into things that aren't you. And you start putting your focus again where it matters, which is all that you are. You know, that is the only one that has all the answers. Not the earth, not Jojo down the street, not the Easter Bunny, not Santa Claus, not the Tooth Fairy. You have the answers. And all you have to do is recenter yourself, not ground yourself, not punish yourself. So, we leave you with that. We leave you with more options, hopefully, than when you started. You don't need to over-identify with the earth. Simply identify with yourself, the most important being to identify with, the only being really to identify with. So recenter yourself, come back into the knowing of all it is that you are, and as you do so, you will feel better than you ever could have dreamed of, much better than grounding yourself. So we wish you well wishes in expanding on all it is that you are, and as always, we thank you for making time and space for us.